Hello, Dave here with emergencyprepguy.com. I appreciate you stopping by. In today's video, I wanted to talk about the no-spill, high-capacity automatic bird feeders that I designed, or quail and chicken feeders, I should say, that I designed for the quail hutches as well as the chicken coop that you see behind me there. My goal was to have a feeder that would hold a lot of food, so I wouldn't have to feed them very often, but they could get all the food they wanted, but they couldn't spill it. If you watch the original quail hutch build videos, I was kind of thinking through the process in those videos and figuring it out. And when I dumped food in the feeders after I had it built and tested it, they didn't spill anything, and I was super excited about it. I thought the design would work perfect. But as soon as I dumped a whole, which was after the video, as soon as I dumped a whole 50-pound bag of feed in there, they began to start to be able to spill a little bit. And then as the quail and the checker partridge, as soon as they got bigger, they've learned how to just pull all the food out they want. And they've just been spilling terrible out of it. And so if you later then watched the chicken coop build, the last video in the series of when I built this chicken coop, I built a similar feeder, but it had a little bit different design. And the reason for that different design was because of the problems I was having with the quail hutch feeders. Since I built the quail hutch feeders, it works fine and they can't spill anything as long as I just give them a day or two's worth of feed at a time, which completely defeats the whole purpose of having a nice feeder like that. So when I built this feeder, you noticed I did a open instead of the holes, which probably really doesn't matter, but the main thing is I had the shelf in there that blocks the food. I made the shelf for the chicken coop a little longer and the bottom deeper, so that the chickens had to reach their head. The food level was low enough that the chickens had to reach their head in farther down to be able to eat the food. And that design worked perfect. They can all reach it. I haven't seen one drop. I mean, they've had it now a month and a half. I haven't seen them spill anything. Today's video, I'm going to be doing some changes on the quail hutch feeders, because the level of feed is too high in those. It comes right up to the feed comes right up to the base of the hole. So let's spin the camera around. I'm going to show you what I've been experimenting with, and I'm going to make a bunch of changes, and you'll get to see that in this video. Okay, this first quail hutch, this is the first quail hutch that I built, the ones that the checker partridges are in. And what I did is I took a jigsaw and then kind of just cut the holes out. The holes were about, I don't know if you can see, you won't be able to see back there, but it was probably a good inch or so below this board, because I cut the hole right along the bottom of the previous holes. So this raises it probably at least an inch. And with it raised that much, as it is here, they can't really spill as much food as they could before. But with the feeder completely full, still enough is coming around that they're spilling more than I want them to be able to spill. If you look down there, you can see that I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but they're spilling a little bit. So I was just kind of playing with this design here. I'm probably going to put a board just a little bit higher and then take this part here up. I can go probably another 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch. So I'll raise this probably another 1/4 inch, 1/2 an inch, and see how that works. Okay, I want to show you really quick the changes that I'm going to make to this shelf in the feeder. This is the shelf that blocks the food and allows it to come around. To do that, I'm going to have to get down here where you can see the bottom of the shelf. What I've learned is wherever the bottom of this shelf is, so in this case that's the bottom edge right there, that's the level that the food gets to be at in the feeder. And if you can see it without the shadows from my hand, hopefully you can see kind of a jagged edge along here. That's where my tips of my fingers are. That's where I cut the plywood with the jigsaw right along the bottom of all those holes. And so you can see that the level here was actually higher than the bottom of the holes. So when the feed would come around, it was the level would get high enough to where it would almost spill out on its own. It didn't do that, like I said, until I put a full bag of feed in it. But once I put a full bag of feed in it, it was really easy for them to spill it. And so by cutting that out like I did and then nailing that other board there, I cut it out so that I could cut it higher and then nail that board there. You can see that the level of this board is now slightly above the bottom level of this, and it still puts the food pretty high, you know, like it was. And they're still able to spill some, but not very much. So I need to lower this a little bit so that the food level in the bottom will be lower. So here's a piece of just kind of a scrap piece of 1x2 that I had laying around, and I'm going to cut one of these that'll be the full length of the shelf, and I'm going to do one of two things. First, I'm going to try just screwing it right there to the bottom of the shelf, and you can see that lowers the level that the food will be able to be at significantly. The other thing that I thought about trying, which I'm not going to, would be to cut this at a 45-degree edge along here so that it would sit straight like that. But I'm worried that it would be over a little bit. I'm just worried that might not let quite enough food around. So I'm going to just attach it right here, and if I still have problems with it, with them being able to spill it, which I don't think I will, then I'll cut this corner off so it's at a 45-degree angle, and then it'll set kind of like I did on the chicken coop shelf, or exactly like I did on the chicken coop shelf. Then it'll lower the level of food even more, and then it for sure won't spill. Okay, you can see here that I've taken this board off the bottom of the shelf there by unscrewing it there, and I attached that 1x2 like I talked about on the bottom. So now this will sit in here like that. I just gotta reattach it. So I'll do that, and then we'll talk more about it. Okay, so now if you look at how that looks, you can see that I've got that other little piece extended there. So, it lowers it about 3/4 of an inch. I think plenty of food will still be able to get around. Anyway, we'll put her back together, we'll test it, and we'll see how it works. Okay, well, it's been a couple of weeks now since I made the changes to the Quail Hutch feeder that you've been watching so far in this video. And one thing that I didn't include in this video because I felt like it would be redundant is at the same time I also made the exact same changes to the other Quail Hutch feeder. And then I filled them both full of feed, and now I've now had a couple of weeks to watch and see if it solved the problem. And it totally has. If they're spilling any now, it's so insignificant, I can't really tell. So that's awesome. The key seems to be the level of the food in comparison to the hole that they have to stick their head in. You want them to have to reach down at least an inch. So you want the level of the food to be at least an inch below the bottom of the hole or opening that they're sticking their head through. And so the shelf that the food hits and comes around, the bottom of that shelf needs to be at least an inch below, at least the level that you want the food to be at, or slightly less than that. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, with a chicken automatic feeder like that for chickens, an inch isn't going to be enough. If you want to see how I built my feeder, which is working perfect for chickens, go to my video number 4 of my chicken coop build, and that's where I go through and show how I designed that that feeder. So, okay, well, I hope that was interesting. I appreciate you watching this video all the way to the end. If you're in the process of designing a feeder like these, I hope this was helpful. We'll talk to you in the next video. Thanks.